Hello, my friends in India. I am speaking to you first and foremost. I want to thank you for the invitation. It's a big pleasure and big honor for me to be present in this webinar, and I wish you all the best with it. I particularly want to thank all the colleagues that have been involved, and Chetana Pokhriyal, whom we met, whom I've known for the past 10 years. We met in San Diego 10 years ago at the Contemporary Women Writers Network. So we share the interest in feminism, in literature, and we're both professors of literature. So what I wanted to talk about today is since your topic is global pandemic and India, about the West and partly the East, as I perceive it, as I live it through yoga. And so my major topics are the paradoxes between the external and internal, the social, the personal, and for all of us finding the middle ground so that we can continue, because the pandemic has, of course, affected us deeply, all of us, at the level that we haven't fathomed yet. And I wanted to quote, before I go further in my exploration of the topic, somebody whom I recently found online, Sonia Renee Taylor. She's an African-American social activist, a writer, poet, and a leader. And what she's saying is very, very close to my heart. And I'm quoting her from her post on Instagram and Facebook. And that post has been spread throughout the North America on Facebook mainly. And people have been reciting the same paragraph that I'm quoting to you. So these are the words of Sonia Renee Taylor. We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. Our pre-corona existence was not normal, other than we normalized greed, inequity, exhaustion, depletion, extraction, disconnection, confusion, rage, hoarding, hate, and lack. We should not long to return, my friends. We are being given the opportunity to stitch a new garment, one that fits all humanity and nature. And I think this really fits into the topic that we are discussing. So what I want to kind of insist upon is that we definitely are all in a turmoil, and even if in Slovenia we are out of the pandemic right now, it isn't, of course, safe for anybody in the world at this point to just consider that we will go back to something that is outdated and that we do need to consider changing. As I was preparing for this talk, I saw today, this morning, all the news from the United States, and it all kind of confirms my point about this hatred, violation of freedoms. So many big cities in America are burning right now. There are people in the streets protesting against racism. But what I'm saying is that these are all external manifestations of something that's much deeper. People are being struck with this pandemic in a way that they've never experienced before. And the problem is that they don't know how to express their frustrations properly. Is there a way, anyway, is there a way to express the frustrations? Maybe we haven't ever learned, especially in the West, how to deal with it. But then we see there's violence throughout the world. Is this human nature? I still hope that we can learn something that will take us out of this predicament, and that we may, at one point, before we leave this planet, live in a world that will be more peaceful, more cooperative, more collaborative. So what I was hoping to share with you is a couple of points. So basically, probably you will see these pictures. Let's see if they will work. I am retired professor emerita from the University of Alabama. And of course, I'm following what's going on in the place that I lived, where I lived for 17 years. And I decided not to stay in Alabama because of many reasons, but one of them was to return to my home country, Slovenia, where I have friends and family, but also because Alabama is kind of at the pinnacle, has been at the pinnacle of all the behaviors that I don't condone, but that I had to accept while living there, because at the University of Alabama, we had a community that could think, feel differently. And just to say very quickly, I taught French and contemporary literature and comparative literature, critical theory, but I also was allowed to teach yoga as not an extracurricular material, but as a course with the credits that the students were given. And those were my best courses. I mean, I enjoyed those courses most because I could talk to my students, see where they stand, how they feel, how they think. And it was definitely not the racist, chauvinist, nationalist Alabama that people know outside of the universities, not just University of Alabama, but that will go into the news, and people will believe that this is how everybody thinks and behaves. So I came back to Slovenia 3 years ago, and it's now a different country, of course, and a different country than the one that I left for many reasons. One of the main reasons is that Slovenia has not been in existence when I left in '89. It was part of what was then called the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, a non-aligned country, very close to India in that period, with Nehru and our leader Tito being close collaborators. I will not go into details about what was good and what was not good. People did have a better life. In general, the middle class existed in a way. People were not hungry, people were employed. They had time for leisure, for enjoyment. And of course, now with neoliberalism in Slovenia, situation has changed drastically, and the pandemic only exacerbated all these problems. So Slovenia became independent in '91 after the first upheavals and the desire to break away from the rest of the Balkans and to break away from the mentality of the Balkans. But I think that there was a reason for all of us. There's always a reason for why we need to be together and what we need to understand about our lives. And it was in 1919, after the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the whole region was Slavic. Yugoslavia meant the Slavs of the South. And so we kind of belonged together, although we speak different languages, like in India. You have the states, and so we had the federal republics. And Slovene is an independent language. It's spoken by 2 million people. There is like 500,000 diaspora all over the world, mainly in Austria, Italy, and then those who fled after the Second World War. And so because it was socialist, and those who did not agree with it left the country. Now it's a very small country, bordering with Italy to the west, Austria to the north, Hungary to the right, and then the rest of former Yugoslavia to the south. And if we see this picture, I was standing on a hill in Slovenia by the sea in Koper, where my family lives, and we are overlooking the Bay of Trieste, which is Italy. So this area is very, very close to Italy. Now, why am I insisting upon it? First of all, Slovenia being 162 times smaller than India and having 700 less inhabitants than India, you can imagine how enclosed we are in this space between all these countries. And if I tell you that from Ljubljana, the capital of Slovenia, where I mainly live, to the border, it's about an hour by car, to the border with Italy, then to the border of Austria, an hour, to the border of Hungary, 2 hours. I can be in Vienna, the Austrian capital, in 3.5 hours. I can be in Budapest, the Hungarian capital, in 4.5 hours. So Slovenes in the past years were used to go into Trieste, which is right over the border, to take the flights from there, or further, little down, to Venice. And Venice was about 2 hours away on the shuttle. And flying out to all possible locations, people going on vacations to Africa, East Asia, Bali, Indonesia, Japan. And now what happened? Everything stopped. And why did it stop? Because of the pandemic. But did we know that it was a pandemic? No, of course not. But so imagine the situation. We are watching the events in China in January. I personally had a big cough that the doctor designated as possible bronchitis. I was wheezing. I lost my sense of smell. Was I having one strand of the virus? I don't know. I only know that it's still with me in a certain sense. I'm still having this nasal voice. I'm still having a little cough. And it's been 3-4 months, and I don't know whom I may have infected, regardless of my attempts of keeping everybody safe around me and with all the love that I have for all the people around me. But so we were watching the situation in China. And then the World Health Organization was also, of course, notifying all the nations what to do and how to do. They found out that there were many more infected people in Italy than anybody could have imagined. Now, where could that come from? And paradoxically, it's again the whole story about what the Romans were calling panem et circenses, the bread and the games. It was football. Was it true? Was it not? Is that just one of the hypotheses that are trying to explain the situation that we will probably never understand until, before we die, we probably won't know what the real situation was. But there was a big football game with about 40,000 supporters from Spain for Valencia, and then the Italian team Atalanta were having this big match, and the Spanish team won, and for each goal, all the fans were hugging and kissing each other. And this is presumably the origin of the outburst of the epidemic in northern Italy, because they met in a big stadium in Milan that could accommodate everybody. So is that true or not? But people really want to have entertainment. They want to have games. They feel happy, the majority of people that I don't really belong to, because to put a parenthesis, University of Alabama has a strong American football team. There's a stadium that hosts 100,000 people, literally 102,000 people, and it's full to the brink. And there are, at the big games, there are big screens on the quad in the center of the campus, and people, like 80,000 more people, watch the game from the quad. I must admit that I never wanted to attend a game. Why? Because I don't feel mingling with so many people who are screaming, and that's unfortunately not my cup of tea. So I'm watching this events in Italy. I was watching them in January and February, and I was horrified, and I couldn't but feel for all these for people who were dying in horrible conditions, people taken away from homes, to put on respirators, on ventilators, not being able to see anybody because it was known at the time, of course, because of China, that the pandemic was really hitting Europe. And so Slovenia was just kind of watching it. And I'll throw in the opposite side so that we combine the external and the internal. So I am very involved with the Slovenian Iyengar Yoga Association. I'm its vice president, and it's a very, well, first of all, it's a system that was created by BKS Iyengar in Pune many years back. He passed on in 2015. It's his granddaughter, Abhijata Iyengar, who is one of the lead teachers now, and her uncle, Prashant, he's more of a philosopher, but she's mainly doing the big association meets. She's doing the conventions and travels the world, but of course now she can't. And so we have this very strict system of certification that the base in Pune established for us, and they're changing it, but they allowed everybody who wanted to move up in the system to pass the assessments. So we organized it for the end of February, and I was literally praying to all the good forces, to the energy, to let us have the assessment, because we knew that if pandemic hit, we couldn't do anything. And we had 3 assessments coming from England, 2 from Germany. They came together to Slovenia. We had a fantastic gathering. It was full of love. This was not the games and the bread and games. This was true love and support, being around colleagues who all strived to reach the same goals. We supported them. We were the guinea pigs in the room to practice, that they could practice on us so that they could show their potential, the teaching knowledge. And the assessors were, they were really praising us for the community. They were all saying, this is what we like seeing in a country that didn't have this community in the past years. Now you are so strongly together, and we were hugging and we were so happy together. And 10 days later, it all was blocked. So, but I'm saying this is what kept me going, this community that I have. And it became an online community, of course. So in early March, and I've been teaching yoga for a colleague who's on maternity leave. I'm one of the 6 people who are replacing her this semester. And she was very, very unwilling to close her yoga studio. We started in January, and she is basically, with her family, living off the profits from our teaching. She's paying us, but at the same time, it's her studio, she's the coordinator. And she said, I don't know how we will survive. And I said, but I don't think I should come and teach, because this is not a good situation. And so she was forced to close the yoga studio and declare that, we will meet when we meet again. And so at that point, somebody offered online classes. I didn't feel like doing it. But what was happening on the outside, in the external and the social realm, was that the universities in the beginning of March were all online already. And so I am involved in a number of projects. So I'm following all these events quite closely, and I'm communicating with my colleagues at the university, at the Faculty of Arts and what we call philosophy faculty. In September, we were celebrating 100 years of French at the University of Ljubljana. And I was one of the co-organizers, and also one of the keynote speakers. And now we're putting together a book. So this is one of the projects we're doing. And my colleagues who are at the university, who are teaching online through Zoom, they're all telling us about the situation. So they have a 40-minute slot. The university has not purchased the professional Zoom, although, my American friends are all having the professional Zoom. They go for 40 minutes, make a little break, and then continue. And they've been spending like 9 hours a day in front of the computer. They're exhausted. It's overwhelmingly difficult to handle everything. We were recently working on a spreadsheet, on a sheet of instructions with all the details about how to correct the articles. Those will be sent, of course, to the contributors. And it took us 2 days to communicate properly what the details were. Did we take in consideration every single detail? We could have sat down if we could, but we couldn't. And in 10 minutes, it would have been resolved. So there are advantages. We're happy to be communicating. We're happy to be connected, but there's something else when we can do it person to person, face to face. So then the other project one that I've been very, very highly involved with is a journal issue of the journal is being published in India, the Journal of Comparative Literature and Aesthetics, and the editor was in agreement that we sent the final draft, practically the camera-ready articles all together, but he never told us what the situation in India was at that time. So we, at the end of March, sent the whole volume. I'm co-editing the volume with the Spanish colleague, and it's about myth and the audiovisual. And we were promised, you know, galleys, proofs back. And of course, we must agree that the situation is not easy and that you are all overwhelmed and that it will probably take some time. And then my Indian counselors are asking what the situation is and how can I tell them that, you know, we need to hold our peace at this time and just believe that all will be well and hope for the best. So my Spanish co-editrix, Laura Pereira, she's a young woman, recently became a doctor of literature, and she's been teaching online all this time and editing the journal with me. So she was spending like 6 hours in the morning, 1 hour after the other, teaching the young people in high school the basic of Spanish language and literature. And then in the afternoon, she was also offered another well, it's a part-time job, and she was directing some master's thesis online at a private university that only functions online. So she had a vast experience. At the same time, her fiancé couldn't come back to Madrid because he was taking care of the issues after his father's passing in Andalusia. And so she was alone, working all the time, reading these articles, not being able to go out unless she went to a store. And when she went to a store, what happened was that she saw the military in the streets at the ready. And she said it was the most horrible sensation walking in the streets that were eerily empty. Madrid, have you ever been to Madrid? If not, I'll tell you, there's the central Puerta del Sol, a big, big square where everybody gathers, and there are streets that are coming down, and you can only follow the flow of people coming down on that side, and then another street takes you up. You cannot push yourself through the streets that go down. So a complete change of paradigm overnight. This is what happened in Slovenia, and I can best speak of what has been going on here. So, so I don't know if you see the picture, but so this is still Koper in Slovenia, and you can see the Dolomites and the Alps in the back. So it's so close together. It's so dangerous in a way to be so close, although we've been used to crossing over, going for a concert, going to have some coffee with some friends in Italy. I was a young person and I still lived with a family here. We would go shop in Italy. We would bring back oranges and tangerines and shoes, and the Italians would come over and they would fill up the tanks with gas, and they would buy meat and they would take it back to Italy. And this is the zone that has always shared all the friendship and the goodies, and now the borders were closed. So the epidemic in Slovenia was declared on March 12th. That was a Thursday. the kids were told not to go to school, rather not to go to school on Friday. And officially the Zoom classes or whatever they are using, Google Classroom, were starting on Monday the 15th. So I share the house here with my family, which is my sister and my niece and her family and her two little girls, 10 and 11, were having very different experiences with the Zoom teaching or the online teaching. One of the teachers was extremely compassionate, loving, and well prepared. The other one would probably, she was probably trying her best, but she was not very proficient with the online facility. And so one was having all the homework, all the activities set the night before. Then they had the conferences. The other one was getting the material in the middle of the day. They were all sitting at home, fighting at the table. They wanted to be together, which is, of course, a sign that the children want to be bonding. But of course, it was also always like, give me the eraser. Why didn't you take my pen away? Why did you take it away? And then the problem was with the parents. And I'm just giving the example of my own family because they represent what was going on at large. My niece works for an Italian firm. They send assessors to homes for insurance purposes or for bank loans. And she could only work, and she always works online, until the assessors were willing to go around. And then the northern Italy started closing down even more, and so nobody could go visit places. And some of the people in her office who were working with other issues that weren't going to function anymore, they were simply laid off, and my niece was put on hold. And the system in Slovenia is such that the government decided to pay the employer so that people would get their minimal wages. So my niece was finally at home, but it didn't help her enormously because she was working as an assistant teacher, because she had to really watch over her children all the time. They're not independent yet, and there are so many children who are not independent, of course. And so I've seen them, you know, her husband, she, then me, my sister, all trying to explain some mathematical problems to the children. So as they say, it takes a family, it takes a village to raise a child. And it has proven, has been proven in this situation. So the children are exhausted. They lost their concentration. Our little girls could go down in the garden and play. In the first weeks, we didn't know how long the pandemic would be lasting. We hoped that it would go over very quickly. It didn't go away. It didn't. And so at that time, at the height of the pandemic in Slovenia in mid-March, nobody really ventured out. It was pretty eerie. So I was here in early March, and I left for Ljubljana on March 9th, and then I didn't see my family until mid-May. And of course, we communicated over WhatsApp and Messenger, but luckily that we had a connection. But we could not get together because, so Slovenia imposed the epidemic, and then the same day practically the World Health Organization declared the pandemic, and then all the borders were closed. The small border crossings were completely blocked. The bigger border crossings stayed open, but it was like barricaded, and only the authorized personnel could pass the borders. And so it was a complete change, again, as I said, of the paradigm of how we live together. Even the last time I was here, Italians who couldn't walk in Italy, couldn't go for a walk by the sea, they came to Slovenia. The borders were not closed yet. And so we could have all infected each other in a major way. And it was, you know, I love walking by the sea, and it was hearing the Italian all the time. So they just wanted to take advantage of the situation before it would be a lockdown for them. And then I have a good friend, a yoga friend in Trieste, right over the border. And she said they were allowed to go to venture out 200 meters from their house to the closest pharmacy, to the closest grocery store, and that was it. And police, really the carabinieri, as they call them, they are dressed in black. They have like a white sash. And so they were stopping the cars because people from northern Italy were trying to escape to their relatives in South Italy. And South Italy rejected it because they said, we don't want to have the virus coming to us. And it was so close to us. But why did the borders have to stay open to some degree? Europe has been, maybe people know a little bit of history, Europe has become an entity, although all the states are independent, of course. But there's the zone, Schengen zone, that was signed into effect in 85, as early as 85, allowing people to cross borders without identifying themselves in any way. The police or the customs officers could stop somebody they considered as smuggling something, but basically it was free traffic for all the members who were part of the European Union and Switzerland and some other small countries like Liechtenstein and Monaco, the small countries in Europe that have some independence. And Europe has decided not to be self-sufficient, but that goodies, the produce, fresh fruit and vegetables would be coming from Spain. There are these huge, huge plantations, hot houses where they grow tomatoes the whole year round. They grow blueberries that will be ripe in Slovenia in a month or so. And this traffic had to pass. But my niece's husband works as a dispatcher for the trucks. And so he was at the core of the information, of course, and some of the truckers didn't want to risk their lives to cross over into a country that had higher risks. And then there were people in Europe who, Slovenia joined the European Union in 2004, so we had open borders ever since. And it was so much easier in the past also to get out and to visit other countries. But so with all the trucks, there had to be an arrangement. And the news, the media didn't talk much about it. They were talking about people who were not supposed to go into Italy and had to prove, or people from Italy coming to Slovenia. And then there were people, there are these daily migrants, people who work on both sides. With Croatia, the whole industry was at halt because people from Croatia couldn't come across the border and earn their daily living. And they were in trouble, and Croatia had to find ways to subsidize them so that they didn't die of hunger, or the housing had to be paid, food had to be bought. So Austria was very, very adamant not to allow any crossings. And there were people who are like a husband in Austria, a wife in Slovenia, who couldn't meet for 2 months because of these restrictions. But it all went also back, the animosity, the anger was escalating as the pandemic was progressing and becoming overwhelmingly present all over. People were getting more and more angry at those who went skiing in Austria and brought the virus back. So there was a quarantine in Slovenia, 2 weeks of self-isolation for those who came back from vacations, and some didn't want to come back. Even if the public transportation stopped, the flights stopped as early as mid-March, the country still wanted to bring people back, the nationals. And so this was the situation. And in the beginning, I was reading the newspapers, I was reading online the news at the national TV that were transcribed because it was kind of easier not to get involved with that energy of the speaker of the government. And then we had a government crisis. The more central-oriented prime minister kind of abandoned his job, and the one who took over had been previously a prime minister, and he's very much right-wing and very much, I mean, everybody's saying it in the media all over the world. They acknowledge the influence of the Hungarian Prime Minister Orban on our government. So beyond the stories of what I want to say is that this is the situation, and we see it all over the world, where leaders want to impose their view of government, where people are forced to abide because the special measures are in place, and the anger, the hate that I was quoting from the speaker, the poet, the American poet, it's all growing, escalating. The frustration that people have been feeling because they believe that their rights have been taken away make us again go back to literature, I would say. We know the French Nobel Prize writer Albert Camus, who was an existentialist, sorry, and his books all promote tolerance, understanding, and he wrote the novel that was basically an allegory of the fascist occupation of Algeria, where he was born at the time, Oran. And it's the novel is called La Peste, the plague. And it's when you read that novel now, and many people are reading it, you notice the exact same behavior that we are noticing now. The rejection of alterity, rejection of some groups, social groups, being better than the others, having more rights than the others. And then my friend who's sending me all the time all these notifications, he watches more TV than I do. He asked me one time if I could get hold of Daniel Defoe, 18th century, 1725, his journal of the plague in London in 1664-65. And those are fantastic texts because what you read there is exactly what is happening today. So literature is our saving grace if we want. We can learn so much from literature and not do this, but if literature has been telling us the same things for millennia, it's our dog barking outside. And we still haven't learned, what can we do? What can we do? And so in Slovenia, the ban was lifted on May 14th. Children are returning to school next week, tomorrow.
Okay.
In the first week of June. The universities will not all open. Some of the faculties are open, especially for those who have to conduct any experiments on site. The Faculty of Arts is still teaching online. They will have some exams on the site, but it will have to be, an hour of exam, an hour and a half of cleaning and airing, and then another group will come in. So the measures are still strict. I'm starting to teach yoga on June 9th.
Okay.
We're sharing the classes, and we'll have to also have half an hour in between to clean. We have to keep the distance. And so it's for us, it's a big relief. People are crowding the streets now. They want to be out. So what I wanted to say is that for 2 months, I was practically in isolation. So what I did, I worked. That was my saving grace. I watched a lot of films because I was working on this project on the myth and the audiovisual. And then I also wanted to prepare my thoughts for a possible conference in October in Madrid on myth and science fiction. And of course, I watched many science fiction films, and the national TV offered enormous amount of material. And it was wonderful that they did, because so we could stay at home. And the slogan was stay at home, be safe, stay at home. And so I kind of prepared my thoughts on Wim Wenders' film Until the End of the World, that he created in 91 after 15 or 20 years of pondering the ideas. And what he does in that film is that he sets it in the millennial period, 99, 2000. And then later he regretted that he placed it so close to the creation of the movie, because when 2000 came and things didn't happen the same way, he was told that he didn't anticipate correctly. But so what he anticipates is the shutting down of an Indian satellite by CIA. It's a nuclear satellite, and when it happens, the whole world is at a standstill, because all the data on all the computers that haven't been protected are erased. And now I'm thinking, how lucky are we that we have these connections, that we can communicate, that we can speak on Zoom, that the children can talk to me. It's incredible that we have this option. Could we have developed some telepathic connections? We may have to do it, because we don't know how long the internet will sustain all the pressure, all the demands. And so what happens in that film is that there's a female character played by Solveig Domartan, who's Wim Wenders' cult female figure. And she's kind of a drifter, and she goes through Europe and takes it easy. And then somebody steals the money that she was given for safekeeping. And then she starts following that person, and they fall in love and they have a relationship. And it turns out that, they're followed, the two of them are followed by a third person. And when you watch the film like 5 times, and I did it, you realize that he's the narrator. He's writing a novel about what's going on. So it's a novel in a novel, mise en abîme. It's really taking you to another understanding. And so what he's doing, he's watching what's happening to her and to the man that she's following. And they all arrive in Australia. And the flight that the couple is on the verge of crashing, but he manages to land it properly. And they walk across the desert to arrive to the compound where his father is developing the devices to transfer images from somebody's brain to his own wife who's blind. So the son was going around the world collecting the images, but it's not an automatic, it's not just the machine. He has to be active in reactivating his memory so the computer can pick the images, and then they will be transferred to his mother. And she has seen enough, because all the people that she knew, they were Jews. They fled Germany through France. They went to the United States, and it was a teenage love for the couple, but she was blind already. And so she's seen all these friends now that are aged, and she can't take it anymore, and she dies. The world it's the end of the world for her. But so the son sacrificed his own eyesight to help her. And then the husband, the father, who doesn't have the goal anymore to transfer these images to his wife, now starts to working with the dreams. And the three of them, the father, the son, and the lover, they completely become obsessed with images. And that was in 2000, this was in 91. Presumably happening in 2000. We were not that dependent on images. We were not hooked to our cell phones as much as we are now. But what Wenders is saying is that there's an apocalypse, but there are 3 apocalypses. One, the dependence on the images, the complete obsession. The second one is the Aborigines who were working with this researcher, and they relinquished their own tradition. He gives the possibility in the film that they will help these 3 people get out of their addiction. And the third one is, of course, is the apocalypse of the end of the world as we know it. And what happens is that the writer, the one who's the narrator, the follower of all the events, he will save his friend, his former lover, the Claire in the movie, the woman who's played by Solveig Martin, he will basically put her on rehab. He will block that. There are no batteries anymore. She can't watch her own dreams. She's completely narcissistically involved in her own dream world. And this is what's happening today. I mean, this is science fiction become true, right?
True.
And
yeah.
I was watching it, I was thinking of it, and I kind of started writing my paper. I hope it will be used at a conference if we can have the conference, but it was important.
Yeah, it was very informative, and you really poured all your heart out into the lecture, and this is exactly what we wanted, how you put everything together and tell us that part of the world where we are and how they are affected, the West is affected and how we are affected. Both you have culminated into this. Like you spoke about the children, you spoke about their education and how they are feeling, not very comfortable at home. They could not go beyond 200 meters from their house, how people could not move beyond 200 meters, how isolation is catching on us, is something that we all can relate to. And also online classes, no, the hours of being together or being on the screen time is not very very healthy, and we were not meant for that. No, its connection of the human contact is also not there. No, the interaction, that live interaction is also missing. So you have put everything into one and given us exactly what we wanted for this seminar. So it was such a such a fun, and some pictures from your Iyengar yoga you are sharing on the screen. And do you have any live video which you can share with us if you can after this thing is over?
Do you want me to send you this document, these pictures, or what did you want me to send you?
You can share with us any video that you have when you are performing the yoga sessions with your students. If you have those pictures and or the video, so we can use it when we speak about your intro and record your intro there. So we can show that those pictures, because something very fascinating, and you spoke about every aspect, like the husband from one country, the wife from another country, there's a lockdown, the people cannot move from one place to another, and they could not meet for 2 months. There's so many stories hidden within this lockdown, and new vocabularies are coming in, like social distancing, quarantine, and lockdown, and new normal becomes a new normal. No, it becomes normal. The new normal is a normal now. So
well, I didn't manage to even address what I was thinking of addressing, the Abhyasa Vairagya, the whole notion that helped me, be involved, be active, Abhyasa, and be detached, be concerning Vairagya. And then using the yamas and niyamas, and really staying with yamas and niyamas.
Yes.
Ahimsa, satya, asteya, brahmacharya, aparigraha. And then going into niyamas. Shaucha, santosha, tapas.
I really love you for that. I really love you for that. The way I've seen you perform. I've seen, that's great. That's great. Thank you, Metka. Thank you, Metka. It was such a interactive session you had with us. You gave us exactly what we wanted from you. I know you are a storehouse of so many information, but then hopefully, because we are doing a series on, it's a web series that we are doing. We are starting with you only. And hopefully in the entire month, if we can get connected again over exclusively on yoga, so we would connect with you again for the sessions.
So will I be able to see my recording?
I'll share the recording with you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, because my
Okay,
friend.
yeah, I'll share the recording with you, and then with a promise from your side that you are coming again back to our this thing in the second series or the third series of this, and share with us the yoga experience.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, thank you, Metka. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Namaste. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.
So we're exiting, right?
Yeah, we are exiting now.